First Row Sports Show. Check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
He's going in, holy shit!
On CABC3, the future of broadcasting. With your host, Darnell Duff.
That ball hit hard. Stretch. Austin Jackson back, look something you can. Ready on the board. Yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
That's right. It's time for the First Row Sports Show on CABC, the future of broadcasting. I'm Darnell Duff, as always. Joining me in the booth today is Theo Tutluck. How you doing today, Theo?
I'm great. How you doing, Darnell? Great weekend. A little bit chilly this weekend, but it wasn't chilly in Los Angeles or in Anaheim, that's for sure.
No, the Toronto Blue Jays were absolutely hot. I know we got probably 80 millimeters of rain over the weekend. A small town just outside of Winnipeg got 84 millimeters. There's probably about 500 people living there. I'm not sure what happened there. I know I'm not golfing in the next few days. Anyways, let's talk about the Toronto Blue Jays 3-game sweep in Anaheim over the weekend. 69-55 now, half-game lead over the New York Yankees in the American League East. Let's talk about the offense for the Toronto Blue Jays before we get to the pitching. 48 hits in 3 games, 20 in their Game 2 win when they won 15-3, of course. This team put on a clinic. Edward Encarnacion seemed like he got back to the shape he was in the beginning of August when he had 400 in the first 10 days. Of course, he got injured thereafter. He didn't play much, but he seemed like he got back to the shape. Justin Smoke played very well. Josh Donaldson made another case for being the AL MVP. This was a really good, well-rounded Toronto Blue Jays team over the weekend.
From batter 1 to batter 9, it was a rock-solid juggernaut effort by the Toronto Blue Jays. And like you'd mentioned, and now you touched on how many hits. There was 22 extra base hits over the weekend. 35 runs scored, which is a Toronto Blue Jays record for any 3-game series in the entire history of the Toronto Blue Jays. From 1 to 9, the batters batted a .390 average, unheard of, against another team, the Anaheim Angels, that is supposed to be vying for a wild card spot. And they basically took these little boys to town.
Yeah, I mean, never mind a wild card spot. Going into this season, the Los Angeles Angels, led by guys like Mike Trout, they were supposed to be World Series contenders. Now, I mean, the season's obviously not over. They still have about 45 games left. I mean, the chances of them making the playoffs, I think, are favorable. But if they get pitching like they did over the weekend, their best pitcher so far has been Andrew Heaney. Went into the game with a 5-1 record. He was absolutely blown out on Saturday. He gave up 12 hits in that 20-hit loss when they lost 15-3, like I mentioned before. They have to get better pitching performance. Garrett Richards was bad. Hector Santiago was bad. Their bullpen didn't do much better. I mean, this Anaheim team playing on home turf against a great team in Toronto showed that maybe they aren't at the level. Well, obviously they're not at the level. Do you think Anaheim, or Los Angeles rather, has a chance of getting into the playoffs?
Well, of course they do, because you have teams like the Baltimore Orioles that aren't gaining any ground. The Minnesota Twins are barely playing .500 ball. And outside of those two teams, there's really not a great push against that second wildcard spot. I mean, teams are 4 or 5 games behind, but Anaheim still looks to be that solid number 2 position in the wild card. Let's not forget, I mean, the Anaheim Angels do have a considerable amount of power. We have 1 full month of baseball left here. And you can't forget the August, and it's an August never to forget for the Toronto Blue Jays. Since July the 29th, they've gone 18-4 as a record. They are number 1 in not just the AL, but the entire major leagues in every single stat when it comes to batting, pitching, earned runs, errors in the outfield, and they only come in one number 2 position, and that's starting ERAs for starting pitchers. Everything else is a number 1 in the entire major leagues for the month of August. So for you to match up against any other team like the Toronto Blue Jays, no other team has. So, I mean, the Toronto Blue Jays are playing lights-out baseball. Let's just hope for their sake and for the fans' sake and for everyone that's bandwagon on these guys that they haven't peaked too soon. And that's my concern there, D, because you've got 1 full month of baseball to play, and as much as you're vying for that first position in the AL East against the Yankees, you have to remember you got to play great ball till the end and great ball into that second season.
And let's not forget the Toronto Blue Jays end the regular season with 16 straight games against the AL East. Baltimore seems to be sliding a bit. They're still a game over 500, but they're 6.5 back in the AL East now. But let's talk about the pitching staff. David Price, I think Toronto obviously they needed a bona fide ace, and they got that in David Price. He went to 3-0 over the weekend on Friday with that dominant performance, going 8 innings. Marco Estrada continued his impressive play. R.A. Dickey had his second start in a row where he wasn't the same R.A. Dickey where he was for the prior 5 starts, but he still got the win. I mean, they were down 5-1, but then the Toronto Blue Jays outleashed with 11 straight out of the runs there. I mean, the offense did a lot for the Toronto Blue Jays. This is a series where they needed mediocre pitching, but for the most part, they got very good pitching outside of Dickey to start that game. But nonetheless, let's talk about the upcoming Texas Rangers series at Arlington Park. The Texas Rangers go into this series 4 games behind the Toronto Blue Jays. And I brought up the Angels series before. All of a sudden, the Blue Jays get swept by the Angels. The Blue Jays may not even be in the playoffs. So I'm going to bring up that same scenario to you, Theo. I knew the Blue Jays can't be mathematically out of the playoffs if they do get swept by the Rangers. But the Rangers are hot, 8-2 in their last 10 games, 3-game winning streak. This is a very good team. Mark Burley, who's coming off one of his worst starts of the season, is going to go to the mound tonight with his 13-6 record. If Toronto does lose 3 games here, which they probably shouldn't coming off that hot series against the Angels, do you think this team is going to be able to rebound from it?
I think they will, because you look at how their offense is put together. I mean, you don't imagine this one thing, Darnell. If you had Tulo, Revere, Encarnacion, Joey Bats, Josh Donaldson, Russell Martin, all unleashing bombs on a daily basis. And don't forget about Goins and Smoke and Colabello for that matter too, because all of those guys can go long ball any given day. And for any opposing pitcher, it is the hardest thing for them to deal with. Sure, it might not be Joey Bats that goes long or goes yard today, but it could be Donaldson and Martin. And maybe it's not Encarnacion, it's maybe Tulowitzki and Smoke. Or maybe it's not Smoke, but it's actually Joey Bats, Josh Donaldson, and Edwin Encarnacion that go back to back to back. I mean, for any opposing team, you have such a juggernaut of a lineup offensively, you have to but wonder, and you have to stay on your good A game, because if you let it go once, the Angel pitchers were throwing everything right down the pipe, and they were massive balls, massive grapefruits. You saw the eyes and the pupils of every Blue Jays hitter this past weekend just go up and up, and they went yard. I mean, 22 extra base hits, 35 runs scored. The numbers don't lie. I don't think Texas, no matter how hot you are, is going to be able to stop this offensive juggernaut.
Well, you talked about Ben Revere and Troy Tulowitzki right off the top. Now, Ben Revere went into the series with a 256 average. He's now put that up to 282. He had a very good series. In Game 1 against the Angels, he was 4 for 5. Troy Tulowitzki's just batting over 200 at 218. The big question was, and some people were definitely criticizing John Gibbons, not only for the Russell Martin scenario that he was playing Martin, he was injured. Navarro played yesterday, so maybe they got that little criticism out of the way. But another thing was, why isn't Revere batting in the number 1 position? I want to tell you one thing, and I don't know if you agree with me or not, Theo, but I think Troy Tulowitzki should stay as the number 1 hitter. I know he's not batting great, but what you need good offense from the bottom part of your lineup. 7, 8, 9. Troy Tulowitzki, you got guys like Josh Donaldson, Edwin Encarnacion, Jose Batista. You guys got those guys coming after you. Ben Revere, I mean, if you're batting in the 7th spot, getting 4 hits a game, 3 hits a game, 2 hits a game, that's absolutely crucial leading up for the meaty part of the lineup in those guys. I mean, I think it's a good decision to keep it where it is, keep Tulo 1, keep Ben Revere 7, 8, 9. I think that's the way the Toronto Blue Jays have to go.
I couldn't agree with you more, Darnell, because if you look at this lineup and how it mimics almost the New York Yankees from the late 20th century when they were having their World Series runs. Now, I can't name every single batter that the Yankees had in the late 90s, but when you looked at that lineup, every opposing pitcher was fearing that class, that power, that ability to get people on base, those players on base. And when you have someone like a Smoke or someone like a Revere who's batting 8th or 9th and they get on board, your guard has to go way up because you're facing the top of the order. And that top of the order is certainly nothing you can laugh at. As a matter of fact, you got to be damn well scared of it because any one of those first 6 batters can go yard any given day. And I'll quickly end with this. You put Revere at 1, you're pushing all those batters back. So let's say you go 1-2-3, 1-2-3 for the first 2 innings against the Jays, which hasn't happened in all of August, I don't think. your seventh batter starting the third inning is still someone that can get you on base and still pull the Sox up. So really by the third inning, you better have a pretty good idea how to pitch those first 6 batters, or you better be damn sure that you don't get any of them on base, because if you do, the top of the lineup's coming in the top of the third or the bottom of the third, and you've got more troubles coming.
As far as I'm concerned, John Gibbons has done a very good job with the Toronto Blue Jays. They're 69-55, probably their biggest chance, obviously their biggest chance in the last 23 years of making the postseason. They hold another AL East lead. They held it about a week and a half ago. That didn't really go for long, but right now it is half a game. But let's talk about the Texas Rangers series really quickly. We know they have to get good pitching. Mark Burley has to bounce back against the hot Texas Rangers team. They have to play good defensively. But what do you think is the mindset for the Toronto Blue Jays right now as they come in from that hot series with the Angels?
I think you still have to concern yourself with the errors in the field and the fact that there haven't been any. And, everyone always concentrates on the offensive play of the Blue Jays because that has been on spectacle. But the defensive play is what keeps this team together. I mean, when you had a pitcher like R.A. Dickey yesterday throw up 5 runs in the first, it was the defense that kept that team together and slowed things down and solidified what was happening in the infield so that there weren't any more runs scored. And I think that is what turned that ball quickly around into the Blue Jays' favor. Even though they were down 5 early, they scored 12 and they won the game. And they won the game in very, very, they showed who was boss all weekend. And I think when it comes to Texas, I think that infield and that outfield play that the Blue Jays do have, and how well that offense is now matched with their defensive play, makes this 9-player group a great inside-outside, best of the ball game. Words can't explain how good the Blue Jays are playing right now and how good they are doing in the field.
Well, the Toronto Blue Jays, like Theo said, are on absolute fire right now. 3-game huge sweep against the Los Angeles Angels, but things get tough now. They take on the Texas Rangers tonight. First pitch, 7:05 Eastern. Derek Holland, for the Texas Rangers, his 1-1 record against Mark Burley and his 13-5 record. You can check out all the action on Sportsnet and Sportsnet 590 The Fan. Well, apparently age is just a number. 51 years old, he's winning a PGA tournament. After the break, we're going to talk about Davis Love. You're listening to the First Row Sports Show on CABC3, the future of broadcasting.
Like no other, this has all you need on CABC.
Welcome back to the First Row Sports Show here on CABC3, the future of broadcasting. Darnell Duff, Theo Tutcluck. Before the break, we talked about the Toronto Blue Jays, Mark Burley against Derek Holland tonight, 7:05. You can catch that on Sportsnet and Sportsnet 590 The Fan. Now we're going to talk about the PGA Tour and the Wyndham Championship, the last tournament before the FedEx Cup playoffs. They start this Thursday at the Barclays Championship, Thursday morning on the Golf Channel. Let's talk about Tiger Woods. After 3 rounds, it looks like it was going to be the Tiger of old, going to cruise to a victory. All of a sudden, he has a mediocre front 9, goes even par, and then he gets a triple on 11 and a bogey on 12, and then all of a sudden it's just Tiger Woods. Well, see you later, the end of your season. Now, I don't know if you watched a lot of Tiger's round, Theo, but I mean, the first 3 rounds he played very well. He was putting a lot of things close to the pins. His putting struggled when he was going for birdie putts outside of 10 feet, but I mean, this looked, like I said before, it was the Tiger of old. But in the 4th round, do you think he hasn't put 4 rounds together in 2 years now?
It's been quite a while since Tiger Woods has finished in the top 10, and this is his first top 10 finish of the year. And I think Tiger Woods, you expect him to do well, and he did very well considering a lot of the game is mental for him. You don't build your I think it was one of the commentators from the PGAtour.com that said you don't build your confidence in a weekend. And for Tiger Woods, who has had very little to be confident about in recent years, put together a solid 3 rounds, 3.5 rounds. I mean, even after the 4th round when he did shoot that 7 on 11, he kind of laughed at it a bit and just kind of went through each stroke with the fans and said, yep, this is what I did on 2nd. Screwed the 3rd, 4th the 4th, 5th the 5th, 6th, and there was 7. And he kind of laughed at it and kind of chuckled about it because he knew that was his demise, his downfall. But, I mean, shooting 13 under showed a little bit of promise and a lot of promise for Tiger Woods' game, and potentially that he is on that right track where he has built some confidence. unmistakably, though, Davis Love III finishing 17 under par, one shot above Jason Gore, who had a great tournament himself. Both those guys getting into the FedEx Cup playoff here with their first and second finishes over the weekend. Davis Love III, I mean, quite a story. I mean, we talk about Jordan Spieth and his story with his family and winning it for his family and, in Augusta earlier this year. And with Davis Love, I mean, he lost his tour card. He had crazy foot surgery, 7 microsurgeries and 1 surgery alone to help with his feet. And especially in the area where he was, climbing hills and whatnot, puts a lot of strain and effort into those feet. And then lastly, going from being a golf coach or the golf coach for Pepperdine University, and then deciding to go back and get your tour guard and win now your third time the Wyndham Championship. Pretty amazing story for Davis Love, and he's very thankful for the people that were around him that helped him out and said, yeah, you know what, I really appreciate the help, the love and support I got. I mean, even his caddy, way to go, Grandpa. That was the greatest line ever all Sunday, and I think Davis Love III appreciated, and congratulations to that 51-year-old Grandpa. Good job.
I think the coolest thing that Davis Love won this tournament was the fact that he's not hitting as far as these Rory McIlroy, Jordan Spieth, those guys weren't in the field, but I mean, he's not hitting as far as the big guys in the field are. I mean, that means you're hitting longer irons into green, 6-iron, 5-iron, and for the guy to go 17 under, finish it off with a 64 in round 4 to fight off Jason Gore, who shot a 69 in round 4. So he was 6 under in the final round. I mean, you got to give your hats off to this guy. You talked about he lost his tour card twice. He had microsurgery a bunch of times, a major surgery 6 months ago only. So, I mean, Davis Love is 51, but I think he just showed that age is but a number on the PGA Tour. Now, I'm not sure what he's going to do. He's going to play in the FedEx Cup playoffs this Thursday at the Barclays, but I mean, I'm not sure if he's going to win again this season now that the best players on the tour are going out every Thursday and competing. But just the fact that he won that tournament last year in a cool check for just over $900,000, that speaks a lot. And I mean, congrats. The guy's 51. He wins a PGA tournament. That's absolutely phenomenal.
Exactly. Is it going to stir up his career for a second or a third run? Who's to say? I mean, the fact is he put together 4 really great rounds. He's won this tournament twice before, back in 92 and 2006. So for Davis Love III, you're absolutely right. He doesn't hit the ball a mile. He hits the ball straight long. He hits the irons fairly well. He was game on around the green and where he needed to be. And, I mean, there was always talk about whether 17 or 18 under or 19 under would be the winning score. 17 was just enough. I mean, Jason Gore had a good 45-footer for tying him on the 18th, and he put it just short or just wide of the hole. Jason Gore, another great guy, great, fun-loving criminal that just plays for the fun of the game, for the love of the game, and he was having fun out there in the 4th round too, and he's good to see him playing in the FedEx Cup coming up.
Yeah, I think maybe he's a little bit upset he didn't win the tournament nonetheless. Before we get to the FedEx Cup, let's just bring up Tiger quickly here. So now this is his off-season. Obviously, he said it's going to be nice. I have lots of soccer games and practices to go to. I'll be doing that and just working out, training, and trying to get more fit. Now, I don't know if you watched his rounds on Friday and Saturday, but it looked like he had a little bit of a hobble going after he had that, I don't know what you would call it, a miracle shot when he pretty much swung as hard as a human being could swing, went about 300 feet in the air with the ball. And at that point, I saw a little bit of hobble. One of the guys on the Golf Channel also saw that hobble, so I'm not sure if that's hurting Tiger Woods at all, but do you think maybe that would have played a part in getting that 7 on the back 9?
I don't think so. I mean, you think about it. I mean, he had 6 more holes to play after that. He played better golf after that bogey after the 7th.
4 out of the last 6 holes he did make birdie.
So, I mean, whether it's a hobble there or not, who's to say? I mean, it's just one of those things where if you lose focus, and especially for Tiger Woods, you lose focus on a shot that is routine and should be in his bag 99 times out of 100. The guy just totally duffed it, sculled it right off the hoozle, and it's just scorched right from left side to right side of the green. Poor guy, and he probably just looked at himself and looked up in the sky and said, why God now? But those things happen. They happen to everybody. They happen to myself. I shoot 7s on golf courses all the time. But not a 7 like that. That's usually a something that Tiger's pretty good with because he has a pretty good short game. But unfortunate for him, it didn't turn out that way. 13 under still is a pretty respectful score. I mean, he finished tied for 6th, I believe, this past weekend. So kudos to him. Good job. I mean, gets a little bit of money in the pocket at least. But
I mean, I mean, realistically, the guy doesn't need any money.
He would rather be playing next weekend, I think, for something. I think that would be more up his alley. But nonetheless, we've got the first rounds of that Barclays Championship coming up on Thursday. Top 125 golfers are in it. Does it go down this weekend, or does it go down in 2 weekends, or when does the...
Yeah, the first 2 ones go this week and then the weekend after, and then they take a break, and then they go to the Deutsche Bank, and then they go to the Tour Championship at East Lake. But I think heading into this one, Jordan Spieth is on top of the merit. He has just over 4,100 points. Jason Day with that PGA Championship, he's just under 2,900. So, I mean, Jordan Spieth has a 1,300 point roughly going in to the Barclays Championship. And with the way Jordan Spieth is playing this year, it's really his FedEx Cup to lose. I expect at the end of the FedEx Cup playoffs, Jordan Spieth to be at least $10 million richer and the FedEx Cup champion.
I couldn't agree with you more. It is his tournament. It is his, if you want to call it, championship, cup standings, point standings. It is his to lose. I mean, he's playing lights out golf. He's playing great golf. He's playing golf that's very supportive but very calculated and consistent. I think that is the one thing that Jordan Spieth has brought to the table from the beginning of the year is consistency and getting points and doing the right things at the right time. Instead of having these weeks where he drops off into an 80th or a 90th or not making a cut, he's been consistent all year, and he deserves to win this extra bit of coin. And he's young. Hopefully he's got a financial advisor that'll say, hey, you know what? Don't spend it all in one place.
Don't be like the NFL players who end their careers early and end up going for bankruptcy. I hope Jordan Spieth.
I don't want to see a PGA 30 for 30, a PGA golfers going bankrupt, but that's a whole different story altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. We all know Tiger Woods for going into tournaments. He only really wants to play in maybe 6 tournaments a year. Next year, you Tiger Woods fans are going to be happy. October 12th to 15th, he's going to take part in the Fries.com Open. That's the first event of the 2015-2016 season. Then he'll also play in the Bridgestone America's Cup in Mexico City, and he'll team up with Matt Kuchar on October 21st to 25th. So that's going to be a pretty interesting pair. As you know, Matt Kuchar has some definite success on the PGA Tour, and it's still Tiger Woods. At the end of the day, it's Tiger Woods. I still think he's going to get over Jack Nicklaus. Anyways, after the break, Josh Donaldson, Mike Trout, Nelson Cruz, AL MVP. We all know Mike Trout won last year. He's having a very good year this year. 297. Donaldson's batting 302. Nelson Cruz, 37 home runs, 320 average. You're listening to the First Row Sports Show on CABC3, the future of broadcasting.
Real talk, real music. We got it all here for you on CABC, the future of broadcasting.
Welcome back to the First Row Sports Show here on CABC3, the future of broadcast. And before the break, we proved age is just a number with Davis Love III winning 17 under at the Wyndham Championship over the weekend. We started with baseball. We're going to finish with baseball. We're going to talk about the Cy Young winners, who we think are going to be, and then also the MVPs. Let's start with the MVPs. Let's start with the Toronto Blue Jays, Josh Donaldson and Mike Trout. I think it's a two-way battle now. I know Nelson Cruz is batting 320 with 37 dingers, but obviously Seattle's not having a very good year outside of Nelson Cruz. But at this point, Jamie Donaldson's batting 302, Trout 297. How do you not give it to Josh Donaldson, who also has 34 homers? He has more than Mike Trout.
It's a very good question. I mean, you missed one calculation, and that's runs batted in, where Josh Donaldson finished or is up to 100, the first player to do so this season. So, I mean, Josh Donaldson would be your favorite when it came to stats, as well as to a player that is making his team a playoff contender. And I think that has got to be put into question here and put into part of the equation, because when you have a player like Josh Donaldson, like Mike Trout, and a player like Nelson Cruz, where he's not there he's there personally, but his team isn't helping him out. I mean, a couple years back, King Felix Hernandez for the same team was lights out as a pitcher, but he wasn't given, or he was given a Cy Young, and there was a lot of eyebrows raised because the Mariners were nowhere near a playoff contender. So when you look at two bombers like Mike Trout and Josh Donaldson, you have to look at those guys being 1-2 or 2-1. In my eyes, both of them are AL MVPs. You can't give it to two. Obviously, I can be a homer here. I'd take Josh Donaldson over my boy Mike Trout, even though I am an Angels fan too. So Either way, I'm in a win-win situation. What about you, Darnell?
Well, absolutely, but I want to talk about the Toronto Blue Jays. I am on Josh Donaldson because not only do I love the Blue Jays, but I think Josh Donaldson is deserving of the AL MVP after what he's done for the Toronto Blue Jays. But I want to talk about Alex Anthopoulos really quickly, and a lot of people were saying if the Toronto Blue Jays don't make the playoffs, Alex Anthopoulos is gone. I mean, he brought in David Price, who is perhaps a Cy Young winner this season for the first time in the Blue Jays' long-time history. You have Josh Donaldson, who could win the AL MVP. Alex Anthopoulos has made this team into not only a playoff contender, but into a World Series contender. Why is it his fault if they don't make the playoffs, if they don't compete on the field? Alex Anthopoulos, in my mind, has done wonderful. He should be back next year regardless of what the Toronto Blue Jays finish this season.
It's a very good question. It's a question that a lot of Blue Jays fans don't want to discuss because they're on such a high right now. I don't know what Alex Anthopoulos would do if the ball dropped on him. The question I've always had for Alex Anthopoulos is, what took you so long to make moves like this? I mean, okay, you made a Burley trade, you made a Jose Reyes trade. Outside of that, you got rid of the farm basically to get these players today. Who gave you that opportunity? Who gave you the go-ahead to say, yeah, I need David Price? And here's the other question I'm going to bring to you, Darnell. When you thought about the Jays and their concerns about the pitching and their pitching mound status, the concern that everybody, including a lot of experts on ESPN and TSN, figured it's the back end of the pitching. It's the closer. It's the middle reliever that the Jays need help with. What does Anthopoulos do? Instead, he goes out and gets a bona fide number one pitcher to solidify that starting rotation. And by doing so, it's given relief to those middle relievers, and it's put Sanchez and Osuna in that setup and reliever position here for the month of August, and they've been lights out. So he must have known somewhere in the back of his head it wasn't getting a Papelbon or someone that was going to close games. Rather, it was someone to get them in the first inning to the 7th or 8th inning that mattered most to the Blue Jays rotation. I think that move in itself, forget the Tulo trade, forget what they did with Josh Donaldson in the offseason, that trade solidified that starting rotation, and it gave it the strength that it needed compared to other moves that may not be considered.
No matter what anybody says about Alex Anthopoulos, getting David Price is absolutely huge for the reasons like you said before. Maybe you're not going to have a 9-inning guy, but you're going to have a guy who's going to get you to the 7th, 8th inning. They're worried about guys getting middle relief for the 6th, 7th inning. But if David Price gets to the 7th inning, you got Sanchez for the 8th and then Osuna for the 9th. He's been absolutely lights out for the Toronto Blue Jays. Sanchez has been good since returning from injury. So, I mean, David Price is a winner. You can't disagree that the guy wins baseball games. He might win the AL Cy Young this year with his 12-4 record and his 2.40 ERA so far. Alex Anthopoulos, he's done great. I'm on board with Alex Anthopoulos. Yes, maybe the future is a little bit scary. Like you said before, he's given away the farm. He hasn't been scared to do that. But, hey, he's given the Blue Jays a chance. They haven't done it in 23 years. This is the year. If they're going to do it, this is the year.
Okay, so we bring up David Price and the opportunity for him to be a potential AL Cy Young winner. Who in contention in the AL would put him against or in the running for that coveted trophy?
Well, we talked about Felix Hernandez a couple of years ago when he won the AL Cy Young and his team wasn't really even relevant in the American League. So we go to a guy, Sonny Gray from the Oakland Athletics. We know that team has just toppled this year. He's got a 12-5 record with a 2.10 ERA. So is that the same case that Sonny Gray is going to win the Cy Young just like Felix Hernandez based on his best personal stats? And then you got Dallas Keuchel from the Houston Astros. He started in the American League in the All-Star game. He's got a 14-6 record with a 2.37 ERA. So both of those guys do have better ERAs than David Price. But at the end of the day, I don't see how Sonny Gray wins the MVP or the Cy Young just because for the fact that the team isn't even close to the playoffs. I mean, you have to give it to Keuchel or Price. Obviously, I want Price to win, but I mean, Keuchel's been unbelievable this year. This guy went late in the 2009 draft. He got racked in his first MLB game, and then this season he's just been basically wonder man for Houston as they lead by 4 games in the American League Central.
The one thing that's the similar stat between Keuchel and Price is how strong and how confident they've been on the mound at home. Keuchel and Price, now Price being a a Tiger here for most of this year. Both those players have been 100% at home. Kushal's been 11 or 12 starts solid without losing a game, and now David Price has now gone 8 or 9 games winning at Rogers Center. So I think it's a toss-up between the two. In the NL, I mean, is it really even a toss-up? I mean, unless you've got 2 Dodgers there and maybe a Mad Bomb, who else is a challenge in the NL?
Well, let's not forget Jacob deGrom. 12-6, 1.98 ERA. Sure, Zach Greinke's 13-3, 1.67 ERA. Both those teams are doing very well. Both of them should make the playoffs. But, I mean, this Jacob deGrom guy, I mean, coming out of nowhere, really. Phenomenal 13-6 record, 1.98. I think this is a 2-man race. I know Clayton Kershaw's been doing good in the Dodgers, but I think if you're going to pick one player from the Dodgers, it has to be Zach Greinke in my mind. And if you're going to pick one player anywhere else in the National League, it's going to be Jacob deGrom. Now, we still have a lot of games left. These guys are probably going to get 7 more starts each. So a lot could happen. Zach Greinke could lose 7 in a row, go 13-10. Jacob deGrom could go 7-0 theoretically and end up 19-6 and be like the same as R.A. Dickey did when he won the Cy Young a couple years back. So, I mean, there's a lot of ball to play, but I think it's a two-way race between deGrom and Greinke.
I think you think about Kershaw and Greinke here. It's like the similar times of the Braves when you had Smoltz and Glavine and Maddox, the trifecta there. And obviously they don't have a third pitcher in Los Angeles, but when you think about Greinke and Kershaw, that's lights out first game 1 or game 2 in any playoff matter. Now, I don't know where Madison Bumgarner was for the first 5 months, but this guy he's found his 5th or his 6th gear in his sports car that he rides. And the dude is lights out when he comes to the with the bat in hand. I mean, he has the second best home runs per at bats outside of Stanton for the Marlins at 10.8. Now this guy's hit 5 dingers. You rarely be scared of a pitcher hitting home runs, and this guy's going yard back-to-back games that he's pitched in, helping his cause because he's the one guy that's delivering the offense while he's delivering the defense on the mound.
I think he's one of the few pitchers who aren't scared to get in the batting cages, and they want to show their presence not only defensively but offensively. I mean, just imagine the NLCS. It's a tie game, bottom of the 9th inning. Just theoretically, Madison Bumgarner's at the plate, and he hits a home run to win the game. I mean, hey, throw a lights-out game, then hit a home run. Madison Bumgarner's doing everything right.
He's got a mean beanstick, and he loves to swing it hard, and good for him. He even looks like the Conan the Barbarian of the old. So good for Mad Bomb. I'm looking forward to the NL. Lastly, we got to touch on the NL MVP. I mean, Stanton's out with an injury. He's been out for quite a while. Does it take him out of the race? I think so. Who do you throw in there? I mean, has there been a one guy in the NL that you consider an MVP? I mean, you expect the names like Joey Votto, Andrew McCutchen. Those guys are around, but are they really playing stellar ball to be considered an MVP? What are your thoughts on that, Darnell?
Well, let's just talk about the stats really quickly. D. Gordon from Miami, he's hitting .335. Bryce Harper's batting .330. Paul Goldschmidt's batting .330 in Arizona. I mean, Washington is a borderline cusp playoff team, but neither of the other teams are a playoff team, and you got 4th place Andrew Pollock's batting .324. So, I mean, there's a lot of guys there, but yeah, you expect the guys like you talked about before. Stanton's probably not going to get it because he's been injured for a lot of the season, but McCutchen. But I think at this point, you got to give it to the young boy and Bryce Harper.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, you look at the matchup at the All-Star game, especially between Mike Trout, at the time considered to be the AL MVP, and Bryce Harper, considered to be the NL MVP. I mean, this guy's hitting bombs. He swings the bat like nobody's business, and he's got a lot of home runs to prove it. I think he is leading or near the top in home runs, has that supportive batting average in the 330s. So, I mean, you can't consider anybody else but Bryce Harper. I mean, Andrew McCutchen's a solid player in the field, outside the field, great with the fans, great with the stick, great camaraderie in the locker room for sure. But Bryce Harper, I think he's got the numbers to prove it. I think he's got the stats to show it, and I think he's the one that could raise that NL MVP trophy at the end of the year.
Well, I think we're both on board with Bryce Harper. I think we're both on board with the top two in the AL is going to be Price and Kuchel. I think we're both on board, hopefully anyways, with Josh Donaldson. Do you guys like the First Row Sports Show? Check us out on Facebook, Theo Tuckluck or Darnell Duff. Ask us a few questions. What do you guys want us to talk about on the next First Row Sports Show? We're going to go live tomorrow. We're going to have more sports to talk. But before that, we talked about a lot of baseball today. Check it out tonight. The Toronto Blue Jays and the Texas Rangers, 7 p.m. Eastern. Sportsnet and Sportsnet 590 The Fan. For Darnell Duff and Theo Tuckluck, you've been listening to the First Row Sports Show on CABC3, the future of broadcasting.